In the harsh, wind-beaten plains of the western frontier, where the sun scorched the earth until the soil cracked like old leather, a cruel story was about to unfold, one that would test the heart of justice and the courage of a man who refused to look away. The small frontier town of Dustvale was known for its silence, the kind of silence that lingered even when the saloon doors creaked or the church bell tolled at dusk. It was a place where people spoke little and watched everything. The sheriff's men ruled with iron and greed, turning punishment into profit, and today, they had found their next victim. She stood at the center of the square, hands bound, her hair tangled with dust, her eyes hollow yet proud. The townsfolk gathered around like crows around carrion, murmuring words of pity and fear. Her crime was as senseless as it was cruel, accused of defying the wealthy rancher who claimed authority over her late father's land. They said she was stubborn, ungrateful, and wild, a woman who didn't know her place. But behind those lies was a darker truth. The rancher wanted her land, her labor, and when she refused to bow, he made sure she'd be punished. Now she stood before the auction block, not as a citizen, but as property. "She'll fetch a good price," the sheriff sneered, his eyes glinting beneath the brim of his hat. The townspeople looked away, no one dared challenge him. The preacher offered no words, the shopkeepers no comfort, fear had made everyone blind. Then, through the dust rising on the horizon, came the sound of hooves, steady, heavy, like the heartbeat of the desert itself. A lone rider appeared, silhouetted against the setting sun. His horse, a great black stallion, carried him with the calm of a man who had seen too much and learned not to fear it. His name was known to few, but whispered by many, a cowboy with a scar down his jaw and eyes that could silence a room. He had drifted through many towns, leaving behind stories of courage and kindness that didn't belong to an age so bitter. As he dismounted, the sheriff's grin faltered. "You're late, stranger," the sheriff mocked, "but you can still make an offer." The cowboy looked at the bound woman, then at the crowd, his jaw tightening. "You're selling her," he said, his voice low, calm, dangerous. "Ain't she being punished for theft?" the sheriff replied, spitting to the ground. "Punishment fits the crime. That's how it works out here." The cowboy's gaze hardened. "What did she steal?" "Respect," the sheriff said, grinning. "From men who deserve it." The crowd laughed nervously, but the cowboy didn't. He stepped closer, the air between them tightening like a drawn gunstring. "You've done nothing wrong," he said softly, his voice reaching her like a promise. She lifted her eyes to him, disbelief trembling in them, as if she hadn't heard kindness in years. "I'll take her," he said to the sheriff. "But not as a slave, as a free woman." The sheriff's laughter echoed, ugly and sharp. "Then pay her price, hero. Justice ain't cheap here." Without hesitation, the cowboy tossed a leather pouch to the ground, the sound of silver coins breaking the silence. "That enough?" he asked. The sheriff bent down, weighed the pouch, then smirked. "You're a fool, cowboy. She's not worth half that." The cowboy's voice cut through the noise like a blade. "She's worth every damn cent." He untied her ropes himself, his rough hands surprisingly gentle. "You're free," he said quietly. "You walk with me now." She tried to speak but her voice broke, the crowd stepped back as if light itself had touched something forbidden. The sheriff's smirk vanished into fury. "You'll regret this," he hissed. "No man defies me." The cowboy turned his head slightly, his voice steady as steel. "Then maybe it's time someone did." They walked out of Dustvale together, the crowd parting, the dust swirling like a storm around their feet. No one dared stop them. Behind them, the sheriff's rage burned, but fear of the cowboy's name kept his gun holstered. On the outskirts of town, where the horizon met the dying light, she stopped. "Why?" she whispered. "Why would you help me?" He looked at her for a long moment, his eyes filled with something that made the desert seem softer. "Because I know what it's like to be blamed for something you didn't do," he said. "Because the West's forgotten what mercy means." She looked down, her hands trembling, feeling the weight of freedom she hadn't expected. As the night settled, the stars above seemed brighter, like they too had been waiting for her to breathe again. The cowboy built a small fire beneath a canyon ridge. He gave her his coat, though the cold bit his skin. "You'll be safe tonight," he said, watching the flames dance. "Tomorrow, we'll ride north. There's land out there no man owns." She nodded silently, tears slipping down her dusty cheeks. The world had been cruel to her, but this man, this stranger, had shown her that kindness could still exist, even in the ruins of greed and pride. As the fire crackled, he stared into the distance, haunted by his own past, a brother lost in a crooked sheriff's hands, a mother left behind in a burned ranch house. Every act of rescue was a battle against his own guilt. "They'll come for you," she said softly. "They'll come for us both." He smiled faintly. "Then they'll have to ride through hell to find us." And when dawn came, painting the sky in gold and blood, they rode, two souls against the cruelty of the frontier. Dustvale would whisper their names for years, calling it the day the law was shamed, and justice rode away on horseback. As they vanished into the horizon, one truth echoed louder than gunfire: you can cage a body, but never a spirit that was born free. And if you, dear listener, believe that courage, compassion, and standing up against injustice still matter in this world, then don't just watch, be part of this journey. Subscribe now, stay with us, and let stories like this remind you that even in a world full of cruelty, a single act of kindness can still change everything. The sun climbed high over the endless stretch of desert, the land shimmering with heat as the cowboy and the woman rode across the silent plain. Behind them, the dust of Dustvale had long settled, but trouble had not. The sheriff's men were on their trail, driven by pride, greed, and the rancher's promise of gold. The cowboy knew it, every glance toward the horizon told him they were being hunted. Yet his calm never wavered. His hand rested near his revolver, his eyes scanning the horizon with the quiet patience of a man who'd lived too long on the edge. She rode beside him, still unsure if this freedom was real or just another cruel dream. Her voice broke the silence. "Why risk your life for me?" He looked ahead, the faintest smile touching his lips. "Because if a man can't fight for what's right, he ain't living, he's just breathing." The wind carried their words away like a prayer. By sunset, they reached a canyon where the red rocks glowed with the fire of the dying day. They dismounted, letting the horses drink from a narrow stream. She sat by the water, staring at her reflection, the bruises, the fear, the disbelief that someone had finally stood beside her. The cowboy crouched nearby, checking his rifle, his voice steady. "They'll come at dawn. We rest tonight, we fight tomorrow." She turned to him, fear trembling in her tone. "You can still leave me. They want me, not you." He looked up, eyes like steel. "They took too much from too many. I won't let them take you too." That night, the air was cold and heavy with silence. Coyotes howled in the distance, and the stars burned bright above, as if heaven itself watched. The cowboy barely slept, his hand always near his weapon. At dawn, the sound came: horses, voices, the echo of vengeance. Dustvale's sheriff and 6 riders appeared on the ridge. "Hand her over," the sheriff bellowed. "You can ride away alive, cowboy." The cowboy stood, his shadow stretching long against the rising sun. "You had your chance to do right," he said, his voice calm. "Now you'll answer for it." The fight was fast and furious, gunfire echoing through the canyon, dust rising like smoke. The cowboy moved like a storm, each shot precise, each step certain. When the smoke cleared, only silence remained. The sheriff lay wounded, pride bleeding into the dirt. The cowboy approached slowly, his revolver lowered. "You'll live," he said. "So you remember this day, the day you tried to sell a soul, and lost your own." He turned away, mounting his horse. The woman watched him, eyes wide with awe and gratitude. As they rode away once more, she whispered, "What now?" The cowboy's voice was quiet but sure. "Now, we build a life where no one owns another. Somewhere the West forgot to look." And with that, they rode into the sunrise, 2 hearts scarred by cruelty but bound by freedom, their legend just beginning.